Wayne Gardner. In the 1980s, Wayne Gardner was the Australian wildfire who broke the American and European dominance. He was the quintessential hardcharger, a man who dragged his bike and his home country to the pinnacle of motorsport, becoming the 1987 500cc world champion and a multi-millionaire in the process. He rode for the most powerful factory team, Honda, securing one of the era's most lucrative contracts. His earnings were substantial, placing him firmly in the global sporting elite. This was a man whose financial foundation should have been indestructible, but retirement, as it does for many athletes, brought an end to the stable flow of factory funds, exposing a deep fracture in his private financial affairs. By the early 2000s, Gardner's post-racing life was defined by questionable investments and, critically, profound financial mismanagement. The crisis reached its undisputed conclusion in 2004. Despite his status as a legendary figure, Wayne Gardner was forced to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in his native Australia. This is not mere debt restructuring. This is a total liquidation of all non-exempt assets to satisfy creditors. His financial fall was compounded by the legal finding that he had actively engaged in the concealment of a significant lawsuit from his own financial administrators, an attempt to hide a looming liability that ultimately failed. This act stripped him of all credibility in the financial sphere. The champion's fall was a stark reminder that a world championship title grants no immunity from basic economic law. The man who conquered the world's most dangerous tracks could not conquer his own balance sheet. Max Biaggi, the four-time 250cc world champion. Max Biaggi was known as the Roman Emperor for his ice-cold precision and regal demeanor. His career spanned from the 250cc class to his legendary battles in 500cc/MotoGP with Valentino Rossi, culminating in 2 World Superbike titles. He commanded mega contracts from titans like Yamaha, Honda, and Ducati, stacking up a fortune that reflected his status as one of the most successful Italian riders in history. A man of this stature, with a career spanning 2 decades at the top level, had easily accumulated the massive wealth required to generate the tax liability that eventually destroyed his financial stability. The core of his crisis was not reckless spending, but a deliberate financial strategy that crossed the line into criminal tax evasion. The Italian authorities accused Biaggi of fraudulently claiming residency in the Principality of Monaco, a well-known tax haven, in an attempt to shield his colossal racing income from Italian taxation. The investigation revealed that despite the claimed residency, Biaggi maintained his center of life and business operations in Italy. The state's claim was staggering. Biaggi was accused of evading taxes on income totaling over 18 million euros. The legal battle dragged on for years, creating a paralyzing shadow over his retirement. In 2019, the case concluded, and the ruling was devastating. Biaggi was convicted. The final settlement and legal penalties forced him to surrender an enormous portion of his wealth, including major assets that had to be liquidated to satisfy the demands of the state. The fact that the case was so high-profile and so factually strong, a case of intentional fraud rather than simple negligence, has left a permanent public stain on the legacy of the former champion. John Hopkins was the American hope, a factory Suzuki rider whose aggressive style saw him finish a career best 5th in the 2007 MotoGP championship. His factory contracts were in the multi-million-dollar bracket, securing his future. Hopper was a mainstay of the premier class, a man whose earnings should have set him up for life, but his career became a brutal, grinding procession of titanium plates and broken bones. After departing Suzuki, his trajectory was destroyed by a catastrophic string of injuries and ill-fated moves. The chain reaction of crashes, from his time on the Kawasaki factory bike to his later years in the British Superbike Championship, led to over a dozen major surgeries. The final financial blow came when a promising multi-year contract to return to MotoGP from BSB collapsed, leaving his income at zero. The cost became insurmountable. His insurance could not cover everything, leading to a massive accumulation of unpaid medical bills. This debt, coupled with the collapse of his expected income and subsequent lawsuits from creditors and partners, completely depleted his savings. The years of hard-earned millions vanished. By 2014, the once high-flying MotoGP star had no recourse left. John Hopkins officially declared personal bankruptcy. His story is a chilling modern account of a top athlete earning a king's ransom, only to have his entire fortune operation liquidated because his body, the very source of his income, failed him. The physical price of Grand Prix racing translated directly into a financial one. Garry McCoy, he famously nicknamed the Slide King, was a uniquely talented Australian known for his revolutionary use of the rear brake to control his iconic slides. He made history by becoming the first rider to win a 4-stroke MotoGP race at the start of the new era in 2000. McCoy was an established premier-class competitor with a skill set that commanded solid salaries, positioning him as a valuable asset to any team. However, McCoy's financial meltdown was not due to personal folly, but a catastrophic failure of the business side of the sport. His financial stability was destroyed when he bet on a series of experimental and chronically underfunded privateer teams. Specifically, his involvement with projects like Ilmore and FB Course proved to be fatal. These ambitious, yet financially fragile teams consistently ran out of capital. When they filed for bankruptcy or insolvency, often collapsing mid-season, they defaulted on their contractual obligations. McCoy, the star rider, was left with months of unpaid wages and bonuses, turning his multi-million-dollar contracts into worthless paper. The financial damage was irreparable. A high-level racing career relies on momentum and consistency. Having his contracts fail, his equipment stop running, and his salary disappear not only derailed his career, but left him financially stranded, losing out on years of high-value income. Garry McCoy's story serves as an excellent inclusion in this narrative because it highlights the vulnerability of riders to the unpredictable corporate failures and team bankruptcies within the paddock. He went broke via unpaid contracts. Anthony West. He was a journeyman of resilience, a rider who spent years in the World Championships, securing a career highlight with a 250cc race victory. But his career and his financial life were defined by a series of dramatic, catastrophic setbacks that left him fighting for survival, both on and off the track. The tipping point was not a single crash, but a 2-time ban by the FYM for doping violations. These suspensions immediately voided existing contracts, costing him massive endorsements and any prospect of a factory-supported future. The loss of stable income forced him to join the most marginal, underfunded private teams in racing, entities desperate for talent at a minimal price. In a heartbreaking and all-too-common scenario in the lower ranks of the sport, these teams consistently failed to uphold their end of the bargain. West was left with unpaid salaries after risking his life weekend after weekend. The cumulative loss of his home, his sponsors, and his factory prospects eventually broke him. In 2019, West's desperation became a matter of public record. He took to social media and posted a searing, emotional admission of his plight, confirming the theme of this investigation: "I'm broke and nobody in racing cares." This public, painful declaration cemented his case as one of the most visible and emotional examples of a Grand Prix rider falling into destitution, abandoned by the very industry that once celebrated his talent. Freddy Spencer. There are few riders whose financial ruin is a direct result of their own spectacular, unprecedented success. But Freddy Spencer is one of them. He is the only man in history to win both the 500cc and 250cc World Championships in the same 1985 season. He was known as Fast Freddy, and his style was revolutionary, pushing the physical limits of what a human being could tolerate on a motorcycle. This historic, unparalleled dominance earned him a massive factory contract with Honda, securing his place as the world's most valuable rider. However, the speed and physical intensity required to achieve the historic 1985 double came at an irreversible price. The strain on his body was immense. In the years immediately following his peak, Spencer was sidelined by debilitating injuries, most notably chronic tendonitis in his arms and wrists, a direct consequence of his intense riding style. The collapse was total and definitive. Spencer was forced into a premature early retirement from the top level while still in his 20s, at the absolute zenith of his career and earning potential. While not a legal bankruptcy, the financial ruin here is symbolic, but utterly factual. His forced retirement cut off what would have been another potential decade of multi-million-dollar factory contracts and lucrative endorsements. His fate perfectly embodies the idea of financial ruin through physical ruin. The greatest physical achievement in motorcycle racing history was the direct cause of one of its greatest financial catastrophes.